Good evening, everyone. You guys ready to start?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try that again. Good evening, everyone. Ready to start?
Yeah.
Very good. We're very excited to have our wonderful guests here this evening. Professor Ensher will introduce them in just a second, but I just want to welcome you. We're very excited that you're here and really honored by the opportunity to be with you tonight. My name is Jeff Thies. I'm our clinical associate professor of management and director of the Institute for Business Ethics and Sustainability, and we're honored to be supporting this evening of learning, growth, and commitment to others. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Professor Ensher.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, thank you all for being here. I know there's a lot of choices, and that you're here with us really means a lot. And thank you to our panelists who I'll be introducing. So first of all, thanks back again to you, Jeff, and the Institute, and to Sheree, who did all of the marketing behind the scenes. Thanks to our Dean, Dale Smith, and Don Chen, our department chair is here, and all of you wonderful people. So that's amazing. As Jeff mentioned, I'm Dr. Ellen Ensher, and I had an opportunity to dabble within virtual reality in that dreadful year of 2021. I didn't know what I was doing, but I posted something, and Taylor reached out to me and said, I'm an LMU alum. I'm doing some things in virtual reality. We should talk. And then she was so gracious to come by, speak to my students very spontaneously. And then I was just so heartened that she said yes to our invitation to come and speak here and bring along her team and her investor, who's also an alumna. So I'll tell you a little bit about who you're going to hear from. These are like the superheroes and super sheroes in the education space. So first, up on my left, the beautiful, brilliant woman in red is Taylor Shead, an alumna, not from the College of Business, but that is okay because we have stolen her and adopted her as our own. So she is the CEO of STEMuli, a gaming company at the intersection of AI, education, and workforce development. To date, Taylor is the 94th Black woman in the history of the world to raise over $1 million in venture capital. D Magazine has recognized her as one of the fabulous woman in blue to my left is the head of digital STEMuli. Naomi is an entrepreneur and advocate for diversity in tech. She is the head of digital STEMuli. She actually built her first computer at the age of 6 years old, and she's a former model. So there you go, beauty brains all together. Then we have our gentleman, Kemp, is the head of operations at STEMuli, another entrepreneur aimed at helping students with career development. He founded a company called Opti. You should see his LinkedIn profile. It is absolutely amazing, but I was trying to find a fun fact, so he doesn't know I'm going to say this, but I had to share that he proposed to his girlfriend on Valentine's Day, which is about the cutest romantic. So impressive in multiple respects. Brittany Crockett, fabulous woman on my far left, is the head of platform at Slauson Co. She is actually also an alumna, not a business major, and belies the myth that people from liberal arts, I am actually a person from liberal arts, don't get jobs and don't get jobs with money. She's a communication major, and we've also grabbed her here in the College of Business. So she has a passion for advocacy on entrepreneurship and storytelling. And she is, as I mentioned, not just a graduate of LMU, but holds a graduate degree in race, media, and social justice from the University of London, Goldsmith. So welcome. So happy to have you.
Well, as you know, I was just introduced. My name is Taylor Shead, and I'm so happy to be here with you. So just a quick backstory. We were trying to have this event back in April, and for whatever reason, it did not work out. And in between time, I ended up merging STEMuli with the companies that these two own, and they both are based in Los Angeles. So when we came back, it was like September, and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have to be on stage by myself. I'm gonna bring these guys up with me. And then Brittany's an alumni here, and I owe her one after this. Let's just say that. So super happy to be here. You know, today I really just wanted to invite my friends up for us to kind of talk about like who we are, what our journey is, and what we're up to at STEMuli. But what's very important to me is that we kind of dig into what you guys want to learn and what you want to know. So I'm gonna kind of put you on the spot for the start of this chat today, but I would love to know, like, why did you show up here? What information do you want to leave with? Like, are there any burning questions that you figured you would ask at some point if you had the opportunity? So we'll start with that, and then we'll get into our chat and try and get your questions asked. If we don't have them answered, by the end of the chat, there is a Q&A. So we'll open it back up and make sure we get to them. So who is brave enough to raise their hand and tell us what you.
First hand, where is it gonna be?
All right.
The main reason why I'm here today is just because honestly, what captivated me was just being Black people in business like that. You don't see that often, and it was nice to see guys to find out and do this.
Like, I am happy to see you here too. Anybody else? Yes. Yes.
I'm actually a psychology major and education minor, so not completely related, but it just sounded really interesting, and I just kind of wanted to hear what you guys have to say.
So what sounded really interesting?
Just like, obviously, like education and AI is something I'm interested in. I just kind of wanted to hear, like, it sounded like an interesting combination, and so I was like, I'll just go.
Super cool. Thanks for being here. Somebody raise their hand over here. Yes.
I think coming to college, I realized that there are a lot of gaps in the education systems. And so I guess my first question for you is, what does personalized learning look like for you?
Awesome. I will make sure we answer that. Anybody else, any burning questions? And you can literally ask us anything.
I'm curious about, considering that this is for children, right? How are you all safeguarding privacy and making sure that the children are being safe with this type of technology?
Awesome. Look at me, like, stare at me really hard if I'm like, haven't answered that yet. And we're like, halfway through. Yes, sir.
I'm actually an major, and I'm really interested kind of in the ones in entrepreneurship and tech in general on both fields. And especially as an entrepreneur, I'm kind of curious on how you would go about raising capital in such a way that you would try to keep debt accumulation down, and also raise finances and capital for your business, and just tips in general on venture capital and raising funds in general and creating startups.
Awesome. One of my secret goals today, and the reason why I asked Brittany to come out, is because if any of you leave today inspired to become the venture capitalist instead of just the entrepreneur, that we've done something right. And I hope we'll get to that when I say that. But that's like a challenge to us up here. Like, I want you guys to understand the other side of the world too, and that's something that you can start almost immediately after college. It's the same as any other career pathway that you could head down. All right. Yes.
Yeah. I'm assuming you all were friends prior to your merger, and I was interested in how you approached the merger as well as your friendship and how you balanced.
That's awesome. I think we can honestly start there. So the first thing I want to do is, and these guys are so nervous because like Naomi wrote the script for me. Brittany was supposed to read it, and then they decided I was going to read it, which puts me in control, and I will probably not follow anything on the script. So they're like, what is she going to say? And who is she going to call on next? So what I would love for you all to do is talk a little bit about like your day-to-day at STEMuli and what you're actually up to, and then I'll get to my follow-up question after that. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. So yeah, I'm Naomi. I'm head of digital at STEMuli, and what I do at STEMuli is kind of a combination of, it kind of thrives from a lot of my past experiences. So I do a little bit of everything. We're a small but mighty team, and we're pretty scrappy. So anybody that works for a startup, I mean, everyone's kind of just getting things done. I kind of fall in the realms of digital marketing and then product development and strategy around that. So prior to running or joining STEMuli, I ran a digital marketing agency for 4 years. I started it in college. Actually, I was in my classes and managing client conversations and started as a web design company that then I started working on my own personal brands. I wanted to help increase representation in tech, getting more women and minorities in the field. And I started growing my own social media account and then applying my same strategies on friends and families. And that kind of really just blew up where I was just managing clients after clients and was able to sustain, a service-based company for a few years. I still had a passion for getting people into tech and helping them navigate careers. So that's where I kind of veered off and started my own tech startup where when I was at the digital marketing agency, I was doing a lot of product development, consulting, and strategizing. I was up at like 2 a.m. with developers across overseas, and I loved creating and building a product and like what that went into, like just understanding the user experience, measuring. There's a difference between like service-based industries and product and working on a product. So I wanted to create my own and help impact the people that I was trying to help get into the same field that I was in. And so what I do at STEMuli now is like managing product and helping think about how we can really accelerate and be efficient in our work. How can we cut costs down? How can we be a little scrappy in the tools that we're using? And how can we also build toward like a really, really big vision, but in ways that are a little bit more digestible and attainable? Because it's a very long journey building a product. It's a very iterative process. It's a never ending journey. And so, I'm always reeling in the team, okay, what are we doing now? And how are we thinking about what are we setting up in the ground floor now that will help us when we get to that big vision and we're planting seeds early? And then how are we representing and showing up in the world in the digital space? How are we, in the media, like PR engagements, or how are we really impacting not only what we're building in the product, but what we're saying to others about what we're doing? So that's pretty much my day-to-day amongst all the other tasks that Taylor throws on us, but yeah.
So one of the things that really impressed me about Naomi is she often talks about like intersectionality. And so you heard that she, models, but then she ran a digital marketing agency, and then she's leading our product and digital. And so it's like, as you think about the skills that you're developing, I know oftentimes you get like, we're in this career pathway, this is what we need to be able to do to deliver the job. But what makes you actually stand out among your peers is that intersectionality. And there's no pathway to it. It's really just who you are, whatever you're having an affinity for, like being the best at it. And when you're working at a startup, you get to bring it to the table. Like I will never tell Naomi, like, stay in your lane. There's not really a such thing. So thanks for sharing that. So Khiry, where did you come from? What do you do at STEMuli?
Hey everybody, how's it going? How are you feeling today?
Great.
All right, cool. So I'm Khiry Kemp, right? And my background is in operations. I have a cool backstory that I'll touch on a little bit. But really, I grew up in a low-income neighborhood in Brooklyn, came out here for college. So I went to UCLA, which, I know you guys have an interesting relationship with, but, all love. And the thing is, after college, I went into consulting. So I was deep in operations. Right, spreadsheets became like something that I loved, right? And I never thought I'd love spreadsheets, but I really got into it. And so here at STEMuli, a typical day, we start with like our daily huddle, which is cool just to connect with everyone. But for me, it might look like automation. It may look like forecasting sales. It may look like making sure that the grants are on track to be applied for when they're supposed. So it's a lot of the behind the scenes things. And to touch on something that Taylor mentioned, we have complementary skill sets, right? And the first thing that we did when we came together was we did an assessment test to see what our passions were. So I'm able to show up to work every day with the skills that I love to do. And, with Taylor being such a personality that she is, I don't actually have to be in the forefront as much anymore after the merger. And she's able to really do her thing. And I'm able to do what I love. And Naomi is able to do what she loves really well. So I think just the synergy of it all is beautiful. So happy to be here every day.
So what I love about what both of them said, they told you like what they do every day, but they didn't tell you what it actually looks like. So I'll tell you a quick story. So Naomi flies and travels a lot with me, and we were going to an event in New York. And this was an event where like I'm supposed to be a thought leader, I'm supposed to facilitate a conversation with some like Fortune 500 companies. So think like SoundCloud, think like Nickelodeon and other folks just in the room. And all they want me to do is like tee up a conversation to keep it going. So Naomi and Khiry, I think, actually attended the prep meeting. And so they were like, Khiry got the first download on everything that I need to talk about and then handed it off to Naomi. She put together this great Notion document. And like, we're in New York, we get in the Uber and I'm like, I don't understand what I'm supposed to say. It's just like, she's like, what do you mean? She literally had like 3 pages written about like, as crystal clear as it could be about what the event was about. I'm like, I just don't get it. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know if my brain works differently, but I don't get it. And so she was like sweating all the way up until when I had to talk because she's like, I don't know what she's gonna say. I don't know if she gets it. So Naomi is like our fourth quarter shine person, where it's like last minute, we have a deadline. We can hop on a call at like 6 a.m. in the morning. We have a presentation at 8 a.m. If somebody else didn't get something finished that was supposed to be done, we can call Naomi and be like, okay, so we need you to develop a deck that we can put in front of State Farm. You have 2 hours. And Naomi's the person, because of her personality, her skill set, where she's literally like, she's not really laughing, she's not mad. She spends no time saying what, why, how. She's just like, okay. And she just like goes to work. So it's really awesome that she's like in charge of like our communications and how we show up online. But it's really funny because they would prefer to have me doing this and working in the background. And then on Khiry's side, you know, like we're in a meeting and you guys might not have experienced this yet, but in some meetings like business, you're gonna be good at certain parts of running the meeting. There's other parts that you're gonna get really nervous about. So me with like, when we start negotiating like pricing, or it's time to ask somebody like, okay, how much is this contract value, or what's the timeline? Of course, I know I have to ask it, and so like I will when I'm by myself. But if Kyrie's on the phone, he's the person I'm messaging in the Zoom chat. It's like, all right, it's time for you to ask the question. It's time to close the deal. So we literally work like that intimately with one another, if you will, and helping pick up where like each other's weaknesses are. I'm gonna tell you a story about like how we met, but I'm gonna swing it over to you really quick, Brittany. So one thing I'm gonna preface and say is Brittany is the head of platform at Slauson Company, which is honestly, it was our lead investor. And I don't know of any other investor in the world that treats their portfolio companies the way Slauson treats us. I can tell you more about that in a second. I won't make Brittany share about that, but it's been amazing to have them in our corner. If you have questions about VC finance, we're not going to answer that today. We can answer a lot of other questions about VC and just the industry and what to expect, but don't ask us finance questions. So, Brittany, do you mind like just talking about like Slauson Company and what it represents, and then share with us like what you do day to day at Slauson?
Sure. Well, I guess I should probably start with my background.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. That's good.
So I am an LMU alum, and similar to Naomi, I took the multi-hyphenate route and have done a lot of different jobs. So I started here as a communications major. So as you mentioned, communications majors can still get jobs. And I was in that route professionally early on. So I actually did a study abroad my senior year abroad. It was with the Washington Center, and it gave me the opportunity to go to DC and work with ABC's political unit. And that's what gave me my entry into broadcast journalism. I worked in broadcast for about 5 years, and then I went on to work in politics and was a campaign manager for a bit, and then worked in political and advocacy communications. And then I got the opportunity to go abroad. And when I say opportunity, my boyfriend lived there. And so I kind of followed him, but not without a purpose. So I decided to get my master's while I was there and received my master's in race, media, and social justice. And upon my return, I was like, I'm not quite sure what to do with this major. I know DEI was like top of mind. But I ended up starting to work with a startup, and it was in the cannabis space and social equity space. And I realized that the through line of everything I was doing was helping people build something that they were passionate about. Not me necessarily building, but like giving people the resources to create change. And so unfortunately that startup went under, but the CEO actually introduced me to Austin and AJ, the GPs at Slauson Co, and they had just closed their first round of funding. And which this is not common, but the first hire that they wanted to make was the head of platform, because they really wanted to dig into supporting the founders right after giving their initial capital versus hiring an investor first. So they hired me. I was their first hire at Slauson Co.
So you're why we get such great support.
Guys,
Something a little bit more about Slauson. Speaking in front of the LMU community, how many of us know like where Slauson Avenue is? Like, that's like common, right? Oh, y'all haven't been on campus yet. What they talk a lot about Slauson Avenue is like, it starts in one of the poorest Black communities in the country. As you go down the avenue, you get to some of the wealthiest Black community in the US. And the idea that like investing in founders that are trying to do the same thing, whether they're serving other small and medium businesses that enable them to scale, or they're literally just transforming the way consumers operate. But with the idea that when you invest in diverse founders, they're gonna hire great people that are eventually going to become those founders that are getting invested in, and they're gonna continue to hire other great diverse people. And then that venture capital is one of the single best drivers to transform generational wealth. Saying that a different way. If you invest in a Black founder, you're bringing wealth to the Black community. You're giving them an opportunity to exponentially increase, their net worth or whatnot. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the chat, like if any of you we've inspired to become a venture capitalist, please do. Some other facts that you may or may not know about the industry, and I'm not going to get the numbers right, but it's like 2% of all the capital deployed in the ecosystem goes to Black founders. And then it's like maybe 3% goes to women, and then it's like maybe 1% goes to Black women. And I don't know that those are the right 3, 2, 1, 4.
yeah.
They're close enough, right? Like we're arguing over percentages. Yeah. And the industry we're in, 9 out of 10 VCs that you talk to, when you say you're doing something in education, say, oh, well, we don't invest there. So when people are wondering, like, some of y'all mentioned, like, hey, I noticed there's some gaps in our education industry. You're wondering why? It's because there's not enough venture capital deployed in the ecosystem, specifically in education, and with diverse founders to really drive the needle. So like sometimes people ask us like, well, tell me about some of the obstacles, like being who we are in the industry we're in, we're fighting a battle every day, and it's not something that we're afraid of. But just to give you guys some of that background information. So I'm like I want to have fun, and then I also want to tell you guys like what we do. So let's talk a little bit about like how we all met, and then Brittany, I'm just giving you a heads up. In about 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to ask you your first impression of STEMuli when you met us. So,
Oh boy.
okay. In the education industry, just like any other industry, there's a lot of conferences, right? And so my first exposure to Naomi was at a conference called the Arizona State University Global Silicon Valley Summit. It takes place every year in San Diego. And so one year I was invited to like this women's luncheon, which is hosted by the female founder of this massive organization. And they invite like 100 women to come in and listen. One year they had Jane Goodall talking. Another year they had like the first Black female astronaut that ever went to space talking. So just so you kind of get a lay of the land. So I don't meet Naomi at this event, but I meet who was her co-founder at the time. This woman named TK, and we're just kicking it. We're just having like a cool time. And the next thing you know, we're sitting at a pitch competition, and Naomi's the first person that walks on stage to pitch in front of a room that probably could hold like no lie, maybe like 10,000 people in it. And she just nails the pitch. She probably was dressed very similarly, but I was like so impressed about what she wanted to do with a company called Infinity Careers. So at that point in time, literally barely interacted with her, but like saw her, met her co-founder. And then it was like a Teach for America community that was created. And then we got an invite, and Teach for America basically said like, hey, we're gonna invite 40 innovators from across the US who we think are building the future of education, and we're gonna put them together in this community. Next thing you know, Naomi's name is in the thing. I'm like, cool, like I kind of know her, we kind of know each other. So that's the extent. with Khiry, and I'm like kind of building to a point, but with Khiry, somebody had actually tried to introduce us to each other like 7 years ago. So much so, like you know, like sometimes like when you meet somebody and you exchange phone numbers and you text each other, and then like you forget their name and you never send a text. So somebody had literally connected us via text 7 years ago, and we just never made the meeting happen. But we were connected, still in our phones today. So all of a sudden, we get an invite from this nonprofit organization by the name of Jobs for the Future, and they have scoured the US, and they wanted to look for the companies that were building innovative pathways to technology. And so they selected 6 organizations, and out of the 6 organizations, 3 of them are sitting right here. So we literally meet, and I'm telling y'all my story. It's like his side, her side of the truth. So we'll see like when we get to the truth of like how this merger happened. But we're sitting, and the way this accelerator works is like they bring you together, and their goal is like, we're gonna give you as much education as possible. So by the time you leave, you can go out and raise money, you can scale your business, whatever you need. And they gave us $10,000, super, super cool, just as like an add-on to whatever your salary was. Every month we would meet in a group for like 4 hours on Zoom. And it was amazing, like when the time came, it would come and fly by, but we weren't really talking to each other at the time. Now what I was doing.
She's made me laugh, like in the Zoom chat.
Yeah, that's, so the same way I told you guys that I would message him at Zoom and be like, hey, I need you to close this out. I would be sending him like private messages in this group, like, and my goal was as soon as he smiles, that I'll like stop sending him messages. But like, I didn't really know him at the time either, but he's just like such a smooth talker. Like, this guy's funny. Let me just see like if I can make him laugh. That was the kind of student I was at LMU too, by the way. The rest of my side of this story is that the first thing that I recognized in Khiry is that every time he had to pitch, one, all of his decks were like super clean. So you know, there's some decks that have like all these words that we say that's not supposed to be the way they look. His decks were super clean, and he was like, every time he was talking, he'd be like, I could talk to that guy. Like there was some feeling about him that was just like, I could talk to him. I could tell he was very smooth. And so that was what I picked up on him, literally. Like, I was like, all right, he's cool. And then Naomi would get on the calls, and she was like launching a product and doing all these things. And Naomi would just kind of be like, here's where I'm at. And yeah, I'm trying to figure this out. But she's kind of a little bit more shy. And so something told me one day, it was literally like Jobs for the Future has put so much into STEMuli, Taylor. They've put so much into you. You need to give as much back as possible to this organization. That's literally the thought I had. So I messaged them and I said, why don't we meet once a month and just have a conversation amongst each other where we can figure out how to help each other out. And so it came time, and that was February of this year, where I was kind of like, well, let's like host our first meeting. And something told me, literally just intuition told me, don't meet with them on Zoom, fly to LA and meet with them and just like see what happens. Now, it's not hard to convince a Texan to leave Texas to go to LA, clearly. So, you know, was it my intuition or was it like wishful thinking? I don't know. But I followed it. And in that meeting, I left them and I told them, if it ever makes sense in the future for us to work together and take on this world together, then let's do it. Just so y'all know, the door's open if you ever want to do it. And then it was about 6 weeks later that we like started making it happen. And there was another 2 weeks where me and him called Naomi on the phone, and I was like, whatever I told you we wanted to talk to her about, we're taking a pivot. My goal on this Saturday is to get her to agree to work with us. And so we called her, we're literally like, hey, so we decided we're merging. Do you want in? And she was like, good time. So I know that's a long story, but like the message behind it is like literally follow your intuition. The second thing is you don't know who you're meeting. And you know, I talked about these little moments where I met like TK and I saw her talking on stage. And then I talked about this next moment where somebody else had tried to introduce us and we didn't connect. But it's almost like just understand that every single person you meet, no matter where you meet them, there's value there. And it could be personal value, it could be professional value, but like don't discount these small interactions that you'll have. So intuition and your network are really important. Is there anything that, like, was that the truth or is there anything y'all would add?
I'll just add, and I think this mic is out, so I'll just project a little bit more. It's okay. So I think from our perspective, at least from my perspective, it's being open-minded, right? Like you never know what's going to happen, but you're just a good person. You're doing your thing. You're working. You're, trying to make an impact in the world. And so when Taylor first proposed it, it was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then we talked about the details when we made it happen. But I think approaching it with an open mind. Founders are your friends is an expression that I hear often. Especially I think you mentioned entrepreneurship, right? So meeting a lot of founders is key. And especially when you're working on the same mission, like workforce development and education, sometimes it really does, the clouds open up and you're able to see a great opportunity. So, that's how it came together. So being open-minded is the takeaway there.
So Brittany, you read 5 minutes or 10. So, okay. I like the talk, so probably. So what was your first impression of STEMuli? Like, I've never asked you this before, but like, how does it work on the other side? So when did you hear about us and like, what was the team excited about with what we're doing?
Yeah, so first off, Slauson Co is a venture capital firm rooted in economic inclusion. I know that Taylor mentioned kind of the name of Slauson, but we are actually on Slauson Avenue, and the Slauson Avenue is actually representative of Slausons everywhere. So when she talks about like being in a culturally rich but underserved community, and that's that fine line all the way through to one of the biggest like what was it?
The zip codes.
Like one of where the most African Americans in that like
It might be, I always say might, because I don't like, don't fact check me if I'm wrong. It might be where the most like Black millionaires live. Like it's something that's known for that area.
Yeah, thank you. I just lost my train of thought. Thank you. What was the question?
We're talking about the first time, like.
Oh, right.
Because
So
STEMuli is outside of Slauson thesis.
Yeah.
Like Slauson invests in companies that are serving other small to medium businesses or going direct to consumer. And so when you say we're outside of somebody's thesis, it means like they plan to only invest in companies that do this thing. And then all of a sudden they ended up with a company that's doing enterprise sales and education.
Right.
Why,
Right.
what were you guys?
So-
why'd you do that?
So first of all, the process goes, we have an investment team and I'm on the platform team. So the investment team goes through deals, they look at deals all the time, and then they come to our GPs, they present the deals, and then we get excited about it. They do an investment memo where they dig into it, they do due diligence, and then they decide whether they want to make an offer or not. And so I think for Taylor, everyone was, and especially when so we invest in pre-seed and seed companies, which are kind of the earliest stages of companies. And so we are oftentimes looking at the founder versus the company and what they're able to bring to the table and what experiences they have. And we often say that we look for founders that are delusional with their vision and pragmatic with their execution. And Taylor was delusional.
I still am.
And she had a lot of energy and she was very excited about what she was building and, the team that she had behind her, the experience that she had, and she got all of us excited as well. And we were like, no matter how many times her company pivots, which it has a little bit, she's going to create something great. And I think that's where we focus, is making sure that we give our founders the resources and tools to be able to pivot and to continue on their journey. But yeah, that's what we were excited about.
Super awesome. So I know we want to transition and talk about like what does STEMuli actually do, and let's like dig into the education space and what we know of it today. So the last quick thing I'll do to co-sign what Brittany just said about the regional vision is the next like life lesson that my 34-year-old ass is like giving you all is you have to have great people around you, because like the people around you, like TD Jakes, somebody I listen to often, one of the most famous Black pastors in the world, says that like it's hard to see ourselves looking in the mirror because everything we're gifted with is just who we are. That's like how we show up. But when you have people around you, they can validate and tell you things that you think are normal that are not normal about the way you behave. So like when I say not normal, I mean like in your greatness, not just like your weirdness. But One thing that Khiry and Naomi kept saying when we were going through the process of getting to know each other before we had even talked about merging, they're like, Taylor, like your vision of the future of education and what you want to do with your company is like crystal clear. There's not a question to us about like what the world could look like if we're successful. And I believe that's the reason that they joined the team. So I just wanted to bring that up, like about my delusional vision. I guess it works on everybody. But let's talk about education.
Just quick note there, yeah, I mean, crystal clear. Like when she talks, it's like she's looking at tomorrow, today, and having that level of detail makes it really easy to back into it. Well, not easy, nothing in startup life is easy, but I mean, it's easy to kind of break it down and say, all right, well, what do we need to do to get there? And that's the fun part.
That's what he does, actually. He has to break down the vision and say, what do we need to do to get there? So let's go into education.
Yeah.
Which one of you guys wants to take it? All right, what are the problems we're solving?
Well, I know somebody mentioned around like education gaps. So there's a lot of gaps in the education system right now. And part of the reason why I even built like Infinity Careers was helping people navigate those gaps. As you guys may know, there's a lot of different companies and career choices, and may be overwhelming to decide where you want to go, even if you have, committed to majors right now, they may change. And it's not enough to just do a lot of Google searching and just hoping for the best, and because time and money is at risk, So what's really important and what, in my work with Infinity Careers before merging to STEMuli was really figuring out how can we help people find their dream careers based on their own passions and interests, because that's really what it all roots into. You want to wake up every morning and do the things that you love. You don't want it to feel like work. And so because I was trying to help people get into tech careers, I centered the company around that, where we took a passion first approach to tech career exploration, and understanding that there are technical career pathways and non-technical career pathways at different companies. So if you think about Spotify, it's a tech company. There's software engineers that work there, but there are also business professionals, there are HR professionals, sales professionals. You don't necessarily need to learn how to code to work for a tech company. And same with Nike. Nike is known as a tech company. They hire more software engineers than any other position. And not a lot of people know that. But people who may be interested in sports or interested in music could work for Nike or Spotify and really love what they're doing and find a role that really aligns with them and their skill sets. So what also feeds into like the product, what I built at Infinity was this career discovery tool, and it was a chat experience. And it's not like a really boring form where you're figuring out like, interest surveys and things of that nature, but you're talking to a chat bot named Izzy and answering questions about yourself. What are your favorite brands? What are your favorite industries? What skills do you want to learn or do you may already have? What types of values do you have that may align with the values of the brands? What is your work-life preference? Do you want to work remote or work for corporate, startup? Do you want to travel a lot? I mean, it's really extensive. And what it did was within a few minutes, it just recommends different careers that align with those. So if you like music, fashion, sports, beauty, you could work for Sephora as a data scientist, and people don't know, you could be working in creating innovation in a role that really aligns with you. So that is one of the gaps that we are filling, is like around career navigation and connecting education and the workforce, because so many different companies, and there's a lot of different companies and a lot of different like roles within these companies, but there are a lot of tools and tech stacks and processes and skills that those companies are specifically looking for. And when you're entering school or like trying to learn to get there, you may be overwhelmed with like, not only do I not know what job I want, but how do I even know how to prepare myself properly? So we extracted real job description skills and matched them to content that aligned with those roles. So you're learning through the curriculum of the job that you're interested in pursuing versus just navigating it blindly. So that is one of the, to answer the question, the gaps that we're trying to fill is really just like that education gap and bridging between education and the workforce, and how can we help people save time and money.
Thank you. great communicator. So I want to tell you guys a quick backstory that like starts here at LMU. So you can kind of understand like, one of the questions that you all didn't ask, but like, how in the world did I decide to like start a company? You know, LMU, I was a natural science major, and now we're in education and technology. How did that happen?
You've been adopted since I heard.
Yeah, okay, I'm accepted. Okay, perfect. So, my backstory is I was the youngest of 7 kids to earn a Division I scholarship to play sports in college. So I earned a Division I basketball scholarship to play out here. I had never been to California in my life before I went on my visit to LMU. I ended up at Dockweiler with the fire, and I think that's probably like what sold me on coming here. But to say the least, like 7 kids earned a Division I scholarship. That means like your family kind of knows the pathway of how to do it, right? And for me, it was just rinse and repeat. So I ended up here, and I tell people when I was in high school, I knew 3 things about myself. I knew I wanted to help people with my career. I understood biology in a way that other subjects did not make sense to me. And then I grew up watching Grey's Anatomy. So I became obsessed with the idea of wanting to be a reconstructive plastic surgeon. Like I wanted to be McDreamy or McSteamy. So I enrolled here, and I actually had the decision, like, be going into business college, be going into science. And science was chosen for me actually because it worked with our basketball schedule. So I could have actually been in the business school, but I'm in a chemistry class, my sophomore year, and my teacher's at the front of the room talking, and I'm literally like, damn it. Nobody told me chemistry was math. I'm like, this really sucks. And my thought was like, if I had known that I wanted to become a reconstructive plastic surgeon, I had the aptitude to figure out how to earn a Division I scholarship. If I had known chemistry was math, I would have figured out math a little bit more when I was in high school before I got to this point. So that was one of the things that happened that like started sparking this inspiration. Now I'm going to show my age, but like I graduated high school in 2007, and about 30 days later, the very first iPhone launched. So I was back in the day walking around on this campus with a BlackBerry first, and then eventually an iPhone, just to like really throw it out there. And I started experiencing like some anxiety and depression. And the reason I was experiencing that is because like I was like this young kid figuring out her sexuality, leaving Texas, one of the most conservative places in the world, coming here, a lot more accepting and everything, but I didn't know that. So I was like, wasn't sharing with anybody my personal journey. And a lot of depression and anxiety came from that. And so there would be a lot of times where I was not showing up in class. You heard it here first from me. And it was, I didn't know it at the time, but it really was anxiety and depression that was keeping me from the classroom. And I ended up, and this is where it really gets dicey, I ended up having like a semester where, you know, like, I don't know if anybody in this room has had one of these semesters, but like, you stop going to class and like, you're like on that thing where it's like, I'll get caught up. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I'll get caught up. Like, it's gonna be okay. Like, it's gonna work itself out. And like, I don't know if any of you have been like me where it doesn't work itself out and you don't get caught up. Sometimes y'all do that in one class, but it's very rare that you do that in multiple classes. So that's literally where I was at. And I had like such a humiliating experience. I'll like spare you like too many of the details, but I ended up losing my scholarship to play basketball here. And at that moment, rushing wind, a lot of thoughts. Like I was sitting here to do something and become somebody and to finish my family's legacy of like earning these scholarships and doing our thing. And all of a sudden, sports, what has been a part of my life for 10 years, was like zapped away. And so then it was a question I had to answer. It's like, well, who are you? Who are you gonna be? When people look back at who Taylor Shead is, are they gonna see that she failed her family legacy and lost her scholarship, or what are they gonna see? And in that moment, like serendipity, intuition, God, whatever you want to credit it to, I had a mentor that came in my life. And what's really funny about me being in LA is people in Texas don't understand what this means, but I was driving with my friend to like Sherman Oaks and the Galleria and meeting with this guy that was just mentoring us on business. And he was like, you need to write a business plan. You need to have your elevator pitch. And so I would start networking with folks, and I was like 19 when this was happening. And these like these older white dudes, like they always saw something in me. So they would like take me to these meetings And they would just be like, have your elevator pitch ready. And they would put me in front of a like Chinese billionaire who was not speaking English or an interpreter at the meeting. And they're like, Taylor, tell them what you want to do. And so 19, 20, 21, I'm driving up and down the California coast. And what I'm doing is like pitching people on this future idea of what I saw education could be like. And I brought up the fact that the iPhone had just came out because the iPhone changed the game. Like when you talk about accessibility, what can we not do from our phones today? And eventually it got to the point where like it didn't matter where I was, I could send an email and you might think I'm sitting at a desk as a CEO. You had no idea how old I was. You had no idea where I was, that I was driving up and down the California coast doing elevator pitches. You just thought I was somebody running my own startup. And really I was 20 years old leveraging the power of my phone. So the connection there is when you think about like the life of a college athlete, traveling and on the road, it annoyed the crap out of me that I would have to take all my science books, all the notes, all the homework, and go on the road. And the main thing was like, why is my education not accessible from my phone? And what apps were out? Blackboard. Every single ed tech company that has been started in the last 20 years has been started because the founders used Blackboard and thought it sucked. Like that's true. Like it might be better now. Like it might be kind of better now, but like that's why we got into the business because we thought we could do it better. So I'm like trying to figure out like where to end this story. But my journey into education first started there. It was like the idea of one, you had a passion for a career, and you knew what that passion was when you were in high school. And even though your family had the resources and you had the resources and Ellen, you had the resources, you still ended up in a position where you did not complete your pre-medicine degree because you weren't equipped. And I wanted to make sure that nobody in the next generation experienced that same challenge. So that was literally like 15 years ago. So Khiry, we'll put you on the spot again. Talk about how we're like, what are we doing at STEMuli? Like, what are we doing with personalized learning? Like anything you want to say, I'll pick up or you leave off, but talk to me a little bit more about like our work today.
So there's a couple of different ways to swing this question, but I think raise your hand if you think that there's a way that education could be better today. Okay, cool, right? so we all think about ways that, you know, a topic could be more relevant to us, a lesson could be more ingrained with our personal values and interests, right? And so we're sitting at a really interesting time in history right now where technology is actually able to do that for the first time. We have patented technology that we're working on right now that's going to allow customization at a level never before seen, right? So the example that we give is that Naomi loves strawberries, right? And so I'm talking about deeply obsessed with strawberries, like strawberry pajamas, like everyone should get like strawberries.
It's not her favorite fruit, it's your favorite wood.
So right, if you have this sort of obsession with strawberries, right? The thing is, if someone wants you to multiply thumbtacks, right? Like your brain is not going to click as well as if you said, hey, multiply strawberries. You're like, I love strawberries. Like, does this mean more strawberries if I multiply them? Right? So you can do that, and you can actually customize the math problems, right? Instead of calculate when these two trains are going to cross, right? And do that kind of stuff. Like it can actually be something that you care about so that you're actually more deeply invested in the educational material. And so what we're doing is not only bridging those sort of interests and working it into the curriculum, but actually working through the environment to say, what's going to work when you're inside of this platform that we're working on so that you can actually be really engaged. If you like certain visual art, right? Whether you like Rothko paintings or you like, you know, urban paintings and you want to see that around your environment, like that's deep, right? So we're really doing a lot visually and with text and with the content to make sure that it fits each learner as best as we can. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, so just kind of to add to what Khiry was saying. So this is our investor deck. You guys are getting a little preview of it, but we're saying we're addressing the US workforce shortage by combining education and career pathways into a video game. This is the environment that we've built. All of these are custom assets. All of the artwork you see in the game was built by this artist out of Chicago. That's a Black man that's the CEO of an organization. But this game should look something like Fortnite or Grand Theft Auto to you. Like it's intentional that it looks like this. It was actually inspired by NBA 2K22 The City. I don't know if anybody plays NBA 2K. But the first thing is like belonging. And so as you all think about, I don't know if you've already experienced internships or apprenticeships throughout your journey, you probably did, that's why you like got accepted here. But the first idea is like, there's so many rooms in this world that we can step into that the people in the room look nothing like us. It might be a male dominated room, it might be a room where people are way older than us, they might be dressed way different than us. There's like 1,000 different reasons of why we might not feel comfortable in a certain environment. And so the video game opportunity is to create a world of belonging where you can explore as many careers as you want to. And it doesn't have to feel the same way it would feel as if you were literally walking into like Meta's headquarters for the very first time. And if anybody has done that, it doesn't feel awesome. Like you walk in and you're like, oh, like, okay, this is what Silicon Valley is like. And it doesn't look like this room even. So the first thing is a visual environment is about belonging and creating accessibility. So let's talk about accessibility a little bit. So I just like to call people out. One of my board members is in the room. He's up there. Hey, Diallo, what's up? So this is a really cool guy. Like he's done so much work in the state and city of New York, involving helping industry partners, like some of the best industry partners, Fortune 500 companies in the world, work with students while they're in high school. He's done a lot of cool stuff involving that. And I give him a hard time because I'm just going to give you some numbers. New York Public Schools has like, let's just say they have 1 million kids, and that's not an overestimation. It might be like 950,000 kids enrolled in this one school district. And then when you look at that, like, what's the goal of how many apprenticeships you want to provide? I'm really putting you on the spot now. How many apprenticeships is it?
The citywide goal is 30,000.
Okay, so there's somebody that's good at math, help me do that. What's the percentage of 30,000 out of 1 million kids?
33%.
No, it's less than, it's like, is it 1/3 or is it less than a third? It's like 0.3.
Oh, 3.
0.3? 3.3, there we go, 3.3%. So there's like so many statistics on if you go through an experience, an internship or apprenticeship, how it will change the trajectory of your entire career. But only 3.3% of students in New York City public schools would have access to apprenticeships, and that's the goal of what they want. And so what we're thinking when we say this video game can bring more accessibility to the world is imagine walking into this environment that you feel comfortable in, and you have an AI avatar. Maybe they look like you or maybe they don't, whatever your preference is, because our AI system will figure that out. And they are guiding you through all of the steps of, here's how you dress for your first day of work and what to expect. Here's where the boardroom is that you have to go to. And when you're sitting in the boardroom and a meeting's happening, here's what you should be doing, here's what you shouldn't be doing. Right now, there are not enough adults available for every high school student or college student in America to have an internship or apprenticeship. So when we think about our video game world that's guided by AI avatars, one of the main things is just trying to bring access and equity to something that we know will change people's lives. I don't think Khiry touched on this, but like an internship is what changed his life and got him a job at Deloitte and put him on the trajectory that he's on now. And so again, when you think about the video game world, the main thing is belonging, access, and equity in education. Now, I'm going to keep going down a few other points on this video game. I was one of those learners that I could sit in a classroom environment like this and I wouldn't have to sit there and like study hours and hours and hours. My friends would be so mad. If I listened and heard what's happening in class, and I could be pretty successful on the exams. I could read. I didn't necessarily have a learning disability that prohibited me from doing that, but I was such a visual person that I would never read any of my textbooks. I went through my K through 12 experience, rarely reading, and I don't know how that happens, and making like good enough grades. But what we have found and what the research shows is that when you put kids in a learning environment that's engaging, then all of a sudden, even kids with learning disabilities start to show up and start to score as if they don't have those disabilities. And so the long story short is during the pandemic, the whole world had an opportunity to see what was happening in science and math classrooms in a way that we had never seen before until you were actually in those classrooms, you know, back 10, 20, some of y'all 5 years ago or 2 years ago. But most of us didn't know what was going on in those classrooms. And so during the pandemic, there's some work that we were doing. We saw that. And we saw kids were just as bored in classes today as I was, 10, 15, 20 years ago when I was sitting in those classrooms. So the video game world is a lot about like driving engagement and how do you bring to life like a math problem, or how do you build context as to why you're learning something in the sense of a career. So that's a little bit about like what we're doing. I think the last thing, just because AI was mentioned in like question on personalized learning, is our vision is like that our application will be like a GPS. So how many people have ever used like a GPS in here? How many of you use it like every time you get in the car? Okay, like that's real. How many of you use it at least once a week? Okay, and so we use a GPS to guide us everywhere we navigate in the world, but we don't have a GPS to navigate us through like our education and into career. And so we literally have a part of our technology up here that's in the middle called a GPS of learning. And what it does is it locates precisely where you are in your educational journey. What do you know? What do you not know? And that even goes back to K-12 subjects. And then you get a destination that's a career, that's a live job. And the system is navigating you turn by turn through all the content you need to consume to move from where you are to that career. So that's the basis of how the entire UI works. And in the video game world is like a stop. It's like, hey, you need to go down this road. You need to jump into this world and do your apprenticeship, or you need to jump into this world because you're struggling with fractions. And we're going to show you a visual way to learn fractions. So that's a lot about like the product and the why. I'm going to pause because I've been talking a lot. What questions do you guys have for us? Yes.
Yeah, my name is Taylor.
What's up, Taylor?
What's up, Taylor?
I'll kind of understand wrong down and then I'll ask the question. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was fired. Saw your name is Taylor. I was like, okay, that's good. But I also grew up on Slauson, so seeing you on there was pretty cool. And then, you know, you guys talk about PC stuff. So thanks for coming out. And my question is, how do you decide whether you want to frame it as a video thing, like a video game company versus something that's education based, or which word kind of takes the forefront? I'm going to be intended and I'm going to study gaming.
Yeah, so I think that, well, there's a lot of things. I could get really broad at this, but I'll go narrow. But you know, a lot of times you don't have to pigeonhole yourself into like one sort of label, right? And there's a lot of sort of metaphors for that in terms of what the world might try to force you to be or something like that. But the thing is, we can be really a company at the intersection of all of those things, right? We can be at the intersection of gaming, the intersection of AI, the intersection of education and workforce development, because that's really what it is. And so I don't think there's any pressure for us to force a label on it, but of course for consolidation, we may have like a quick term that we use, but it's really all of those things.
And a different answer, I think it depends what the VC invested that you're talking to. Oh, you're in gaming VC, we're a gaming company. Like, we can be whatever we need to be. Does that answer your question? Awesome.
I was gonna say, I'd be super interested to hear what your fundraising journey was like and how you were able to get to the point where you could even build your company.
I have to answer this question because unfortunately these guys weren't there when I was first raising, but I mean, the STEMuli was founded in June 1st of 2016. So theoretically, from the sense of like how fast startups are built and grow, we've been in the game for a long time. For the first like 5-ish years of STEMuli's life, probably 4, we did what we call bootstrapping, where we built a product, we licensed the product out, and we were able to make profit and just run the business very small and lean. When the pandemic happened, we kind of went Defense Production Act, and we were like, there's an opportunity for us to move from the space of workforce development into serving in a core classroom, teaching math and science. We can dramatically expand our addressable market. Or now all of a sudden we're like more attractive to investors, and we have a higher growth trajectory. So with that said, my path was completely non-traditional into venture capital because for the first like 4 or 5 years of STEMuli's life, I would go around telling venture capitalists about the importance of workforce development in K-12 and the fact that, hey, if you put money on this is a problem that needs to be solved and we can scale this way. And nobody, like, I don't want to say F word, but nobody gave anything about what we were trying to do with workforce development. And so they were passing like, no thanks, no thanks, no thanks. And then the pandemic happened, and relationships is one of the ways that we were able to raise capital. But I say that because we had a relationship where a foundation paid us about $1.5 million to build the first version of the video game. But the real story is the foundation signed a $3 million contract to build this game with us. So we staffed up our entire team that might have been like 15 and had 35 people working in the middle of the pandemic on this project where we were going to launch school in a video game in a public school district in August of 2021. So they signed this $3 million contract with us, like, get your popcorn out, the story's getting ready to get dicey. They paid us 2 payments totaling like $500,000. Like the last payment we received from them was the day school started. And they kept saying all these different things. The long story short is they owed us $3 million. We staffed up. Our team went probably like 8 months without getting paid because we wanted to keep the school alive, even though we were a for-profit organization. And we ended up like almost in a lawsuit with this organization. Like we should have sued them, but what nobody tells you is that when you're trying to play politics, like you're not gonna put a headline out there that you don't want any of your future customers to see. And so when we raised venture capital, we had built a business where we were supposed to be making about $60,000 to $70,000 profit a month. But instead, now all of a sudden we were like $1 million in debt. So somebody mentioned like, how do you raise money without going into debt? Don't ask me how I went $1 million in debt. I didn't have $1 million. That is the conundrum we had to figure out is how you do that. But so when we raised capital, we had to raise capital. We didn't have an option and the business wasn't going to survive. And the school district kept stringing us along, like we're going to get our money, we're going to get our money. So at no point did we ever know that like we weren't going to get this money, but we knew that we had to be able to pay our people. And so think about this. This is like through the pandemic, Thanksgiving passed by, Christmas passed by. We actually raised $250,000 for this organization to help them pay us back. And they still didn't give us the money because they wanted to like be able to negotiate with us. So what was happening concurrent to that is we were the company that launched the country's first educational metaverse in August of 2021. And if you go back and Google this, Facebook didn't change their name to Meta until like September of 2021. So we were on stage talking about our educational metaverse in August. And then as soon as the world found out about this thing called the metaverse and they wanted to see what it was like in education, they would Google it and all they could find as far as a built product was what STEMuli had built. So yeah, that's like, it's really cool. Like, but you see that all these headlines were on the news and nobody knows like we're not getting paid. And so like when you hear a startup life, like it's not all, most of it isn't glamour. But I'll to like get to Brittany's question as far as how we raise, because this became like really interesting. And this is a story about why it's like right to pick the right investor. So our first offer came in to invest in STEMuli, and it was going to be like $1 million at a $10 million valuation. 500,000 would come up front, and then like another like 500,000, like 800,000 would come later. But the terms that were written into this agreement were so bad that even though we hadn't been paid, I was like, just hold on a second, like we need more time. And then the next investor came in, and it was Tim Draper, Draper and Associates. His family is like well known in the VC space, and he was trying to do the same thing. I'll give you $1 million for 20% of your company. I'm like, hell no, like we're getting worse. Like the other deal was better. And then we met the guys at Slauson. But like when we met the guys at Slauson, keep in mind we had 2 offers on the table. So when we met with them, they're great people, but we were really confident because like the bargain or the negotiation power was kind of with us. And they called me, they like sent me a text one day, they're like, hey, can you jump on the phone? And at this point in time, I bring like I call my homies. It was like the people that work with me. I was like, all of us got on the phone because I wanted us all to be there in the moment that like something cool happened. And they were like, we want in on your round. Like, what do we have to do in order to get in on this round? And the offer they put on the table for us was the best offer that we had gotten at that point in time. It was the last offer. And not only did they put that offer on the table, but they went back to Tim Drake, who was a billionaire, and got
Tim is
him.
one of our investors.
Uh-huh.
He's an investor as well.
He's an investor in Slauson, and they convinced him to raise the valuation of what he was willing to put money in with us. And so at that point, we ended up closing the round in May of 2022. It took like 6 months because of a lot of different things. Like I can tell you all the things not to do before you want to close a raise, but we ended up raising $3 million, and Slauson was our lead investor. And they've been in our corner ever since. And just because you have investors on your cap table doesn't mean they're in our corner. But that was our path to raise it.
And I would say, and it's so amazing, I'm always inspired by Taylor's ability to be able to raise and, really defeat the odds, because the odds are very, very slim in the industry. If you are thinking about pursuing entrepreneurship and startup life, venture capital isn't the only way that you need to go. When I ran my company, I actually didn't raise any venture capital. I went through grants, pitch competitions. Accelerator programs are like the best things ever, because not only are you in a program where they're actually providing you structure and it's teaching you accountability for what you're doing, and even going through applications of accelerator programs will help you shape your business and your business model and your business plan. And it will ask you questions that you may not be asking yourself every single day. And then when you're in that, they're actually keeping you accountable, forcing you to come out your comfort zone, pitching left and right. I did a few different versions of a lot of virtual accelerator programs and then in-person ones. I went to Tulsa, Oklahoma for 4 months last year and did an accelerator program in-house, and it came with capital as well. And that was an incredible experience. But yeah, venture capital is an amazing if you can get that, but also look at alternatives that will help you shape your company, and it doesn't hurt to try. And don't be discouraged if you do get a lot of no's from different programs or grants, but just see the good in, we keep one running document of all of our application questions in one place, so it can help rinse and repeat. But then you'll also see how you evolve your business plan from that first application you put in. We had over 100 pages worth on a Google Doc of different applications, where it's going to help force you to really think about what you're creating. So definitely explore those options.
I have to say, shameless plug, Slauson Co.
The bags.
Also has Wolf Bag to one of our portfolio companies, supports founders in getting loans and non-dilutive funding. And so they are just supporting founders and also building their businesses now. And then also Slauson Co has an accelerator called Friends and Family. And we started that accelerator because a lot of people who are underserved, under-resourced, don't have access to friends and family capital, which is usually the first capital that someone would get to start to build their company. And so a lot of Black and brown people aren't able to ask an uncle or a mom or a dad for $25,000. And so we started this program as an opportunity to be the friends and family round for entrepreneurs, and also had a 12-week program focused on building customers, go-to-market strategy, how to fundraise, and also teaching them about all the different types of capital that were out there, because in starting the program, a lot of people didn't have a full understanding of what venture was or what VC was. And so we had one of our sessions is demystifying venture capital. And in that session, I feel like it's after that when people are like, that's not the route for me, or 100%, I'm going to build a scalable business and I'm going to dig in, and now I have these tools and I'm going to go for it. So if you are an entrepreneur, check out Friends and Family.
It's launching on October 3rd?
October 3rd, yeah, the application will go live.
What other questions do you guys have for us? Okay, we have one here and then one here, so let's start over here. Or two over here.
I guess I'm just curious about the timeline. I mean, it's kind of probably hard to be like, oh yeah, exactly what we're gonna do this time period and where. But how do you guys get in the company, and are you still in development and kind of stuff?
I can answer the last question. When you say timeline, the timeline for what exactly? Just the evolution of the company?
Yeah.
So I'll start with your last question. We're very much still in development, and what's really cool about me being able to say that today is, your company and what you're doing evolves so much that like one point I'm like, no, our product's done. Like we're out in the market. And then I took a step back and I'm like, wait, we're not done. We have so much more left to do. So like our product is still in R&D. What we've done is we've taken tools that have been widely used on the market and we're combining different tools that have never been combined before. So like the Navigator, the video game, it hasn't existed before, but the Navigator has served 20 million learners across the US. And so putting that in a video game, we're banking on really great results. And then as far as like the evolution of the company, you're right, like there's not like one standard path. One topic I could talk about is the average company that goes public, it'll go public, I think between like, it's either 6 to 9 years or 7 to 10 years after it started. So that's like one measure, like we want to take our company public. So we'll see what happens over the next 5 to 7 years as we're continuing to build. But other than that, like we weren't traditional. We didn't go after venture capital. We didn't go through pre-seed investment and then seed and then Series A. Like we skipped the pre-seed investment because we got so much grant capital and philanthropic capital to build the actual product. So we have a question here, and I'm gonna turn it back over to you.
I have to say though, really quickly, when we met Taylor, she said she was gonna build $1 billion company.
That's a trillion.
Yeah.
Delusional.
That was also why we were intrigued.
Yeah, so I have two questions, but they're both really short, and the first one precedes the other, so I'll just ask that one first. And that question was, what age range is this targeted towards? Like, is it meant for like junior, senior level students, or all of high school kids start in middle school? Like, what is it?
So yeah, that's a good question. So I think, a lot of the work that Taylor has done before we joined was really around like middle school, right? And then you move up into high school. But the thing is, if you're able to work with students when they're young, there's more sort of like deviation from paths as you get older, right? So if you think about high school, there's a lot of students in high school and a lot of them don't go, let's say, to college. But if we're engaged with them at high school, even if they don't go to college, then they're still able to like interact with the platform. So I'd say we're really, well, K-12 is like the category, but starting from like 6th grade, right? 7th grade, 8th grade, we see the importance of even understanding pre-algebra, like at those early ages. So I'd say middle school is really important for us, then high school and secondary. And we've tested with colleges as well. So we're really positioned to go that full spectrum. There's one expression that this organization likes to use that we work with, which is from 6th grade to their 16th year. And then of course the vision is to continue to build up as they get older to be that consistent point where folks return to.
Okay, and then the second question, it was on the slide, the slide's changing kind of.
Sorry about that.
The second question was, is there a way to like, within like as interests change, is there a way to change your pathway, or is it like you're set into one pathway?
So that's another good question. So for years, what I've been saying, because I personally mentor a lot of high school students as well. And I say, hey, look, if you try something, you're pursuing a certain career path, and then you find an internship, right, and you find out that you hate it, that's great. If you find out that you love it, that's great, right? Because as long as you're able to find out that you don't like, you're able to rule it out and then pursue the next thing. So being able to navigate it, navigate, right, like the navigator, you're able to really explore in a way where you don't want to be, stuck in a job and you're like, oh, it's too late, I graduated, I have to commit to this thing, or have that kind of feeling. You want to say, hey, I tried this, what's next? And the goal is to get to that fulfilling career that Naomi talked about. So we encourage exploration.
Yeah, and a quick couple of things. So lifelong learning is really what we're targeted at. I talk a lot about how there's apps that all of us use over a lifetime, just naming a few, like Netflix, I've used like since it first came out, right? And we'll continue to use it. Uber. I know y'all don't use Facebook anymore, but like Facebook came out when I was in high school, and it's still something I check in with my people. But there's like all of these apps that in the consumer's world, like we've used on a daily basis over our entire lifetime. And our question is, why doesn't education have the same comparison? And so if you can imagine like all the exploration you're talking about doing, starting in middle school, and there being an app that knows you well enough and that you're feeding information into over your lifetime that's built to make you smarter, that's really the goal. And so, Khiry talked about like really where we started off our focus, but if you look at this screen, I know there's a lot of lines and we'll walk you guys through how this works, but when we're successful, we will have done this across the entire United States. And so what you're looking at is the idea that we're working directly with the industry. So all the way at the bottom, you see key partners. The industry we're focused on is semiconductors. If you guys haven't heard about the CHIPS Act, then look it up after this. But essentially the nation's ability to say like, we're gonna start developing all of our chips here domestically. We're not gonna be importing them from other countries. And so with us moving all that manufacturing to the United States, we need a workforce that doesn't exist right now. And so we'll work directly with these companies in order to outline exactly what Naomi said, which is like, what are the jobs you need to hire for and what are the skills that those jobs require? And then what we're gonna do is develop curriculum that's mapped and delivered into 6th to 12th grade education institutions and delivered in community colleges and 4 universities and PhD programs that is designed around the skills that you'll need to get these jobs. And then what will happen as an output is you'll have these on-ramps and off-ramps throughout your entire educational journey or throughout your career where you could say, I'm graduating 12th grade, but now I have the credentials to go work at an entry-level job in the semiconductor industry. And even once I get that job through the same platform, I should have opportunities to continue to upskill into advanced level jobs and expert level jobs. Or if I stay on my educational journey with community colleges and going to my 4-year degree, at least I have navigation to tell me like, what are the best programs that I should enroll in to gain these skills? And you know, every class is adding up to what's helping you increase like your earning potential. And right now I know that's not how education works. So just wanted to share this with you guys because this is what we have done effectively when we kind of changed the US workforce shortage, starting way earlier than most people ever starting, backwards mapping curriculum from the live jobs that you actually want to get, and then providing it in a digital format so it's available to everybody. It's not dependent on you being born in a zip code that has like, you know, higher taxes and then better teachers that are making more salaries. So just wanted to share that with you all. Throw the question back over here.
Hi, my name is Tyler, computer science major. This is very interesting to me. My interest kind of lies in cybersecurity. They kind of go everywhere. I'm trying to figure out where that's gonna go, but it's also entrepreneurship. I know I want to be a business owner one day. And so my question was for you was, you know, in these spaces where you're the only one, it looks like you and like in your demographic, how do you, because I know you did some competitions and stuff like that, honestly for all of you, in these spaces where you're the only one, how do you guys navigate, you know, being able to be the one taken seriously, if that makes sense, for them to take you seriously, and not see you as, oh, let's just, you know, get money, just like, I'm gonna listen to your pitch, and I'm gonna understand you and try to, you know, see you as a equal. How do you guys manage?
I think it'd be cool if all of us like took a stab at this question. I pulled up this slide because if you look at our team, we're matching like our logo. So this is intentional. Like I'm the prototype for this look. It's like the bright suits and the sneakers. But I pulled this up because like I literally show up as I am. And the reason I do that is because nobody can be me better than me. So a lot of the people, if you think about me being at like an ed tech conference with a lot of white males, like only a certain percentage of them are gonna look cool in some J's, right? And then only a certain percentage is gonna be bold enough to put on a red suit. And then only a certain percentage is gonna be bold enough to put on a hat, right? And so I would literally go to these competitions and I've been in conferences where I've pitched on stage and I knew nobody when I went to the conference. And I didn't know what to do after I got off stage, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna stand in the middle of the foyer and they're gonna remember my sparkly shoes and see this hat and come up to me. And so like, I don't shy away from like who I am. And I would say this year, what STEMuli really was intentional about is continuing to hire people that reflect our brand. And so like, we want to show up, and when you look at this photo, like I don't want people to feel like it's easy to replicate that. Like there's not another educational technology company that's leadership team looks, and it's not just about looks, right? But there's not another team that's like made up of the intersectionality that we have. And so I would just say like, part of it is showing up as you are, knowing that the right investors, the right team members, the right everything is going to surround your vision. As opposed to the idea of like, you need to change yourself in order to get other people to buy into who you are. It's the opposite way around. Like, you need to buy into that we're gonna do this thing. Like, we're like married for life now, like between us and Slauson. So you just really want to be sure about like who you surround yourself with.
And, you know, I feel I have the same feelings, like even today, you know, imposter syndrome is real. Like imposter syndrome, feeling like you don't belong, or like, you know, all your accolades or whatever you learned, it just like disappears once you're in the place that you actually are supposed to be. And entering those rooms, like you're so unique in your perspective. Like everyone experiences so many different things in so many different ways, comes from all different types of backgrounds. You are needed most in those rooms to offer your perspective. And it's more of a mental thing, to like constantly like remind yourself. And if you continue to show up and there are people that don't look at you, continue to show up and then influence other people to fill up those rooms. If you remove yourself from those rooms, then those rooms will still keep looking like those rooms. So it's more important, more than ever, to be in those rooms and continue leading that way, and then driving the force to bring other people. And no matter what you experience, you know, that's why that passion first approach to education or just career navigation is so important. Working for a company like Nike, if you didn't make it to the league, you can work for NBA, your favorite NBA team, in a role that needs your representation. You know, just of all players they need to be in those rooms if they know that industry like the back of their hands, and they know what could be used to advance it, and what their living experiences of that. So no matter what you're going through or whatever your path or hobbies are, you know, music, I manage my brother's music career right now. I model as well. I'm integrating myself in the fashion industry, in the music industry, and really putting myself in there so I can even spark ideas of how we can innovate those industries even further. So continue just pushing forward, and then everything will align in the way that it's supposed to.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great explanation. I think, you know, I personally think that the best defense is to be as great as you can be, to be undeniably great, to where it doesn't matter where you go, like you are in demand, right? Your skills and abilities knock down doors for you, knock down barriers. I mean, and I've seen it in a lot of rooms where, you know, at the college that I went to, 3% Black, right? As what she said, 3% women get VC, 2%, right, goes to Black families and such. And so, you know, I don't necessarily want to be hard and say get used to being the 2 or 3%, but in a way, it's just like if you're great and you keep going and you persevere, right, like you're the person, right? So computer science, what I heard from you, like if you are the best at what you do, opportunity will find you if you keep it up. So that's the best way to say it.
And just like co-signing on that, like we've all heard, like you got to be 10 times better, right? We've heard that. One thing that I think Austin says is like, if we have to be 10 times better, then you're literally going to be 10 times better. So it's not something to get upset about, but knowing that like you do have to show up, your deck has to look right. You have to have your financials together. You have to know your financials. You have to be sure of your answers. You have to know your market. So like literally being 10 times better is the way you do it. But the bright side is then you're 10 times better. That's the thing.
Wait, and then you get it. And that's just like and the quick note, even like after I graduated, right? Like I mentioned spreadsheets earlier. I used to hate spreadsheets, right? And nobody, like a lot of people don't know that, but just in the spirit of trying to be the greatest that I could be, I was like, all right, this is a weakness of mine. I'm gonna love these spreadsheets and I'm gonna become the best. And so people are calling on me like, yo, you're the spreadsheet guy. Like, you know what I mean? And that was like a goal of mine. So it's just like attacking your weaknesses and trying to be as great as you can.
Yeah, I would say a mix of what Naomi and Taylor both said, but when I came into the VC space, I was super insecure about it just because I didn't have any experience whatsoever. And so I felt like when I would go into rooms, especially, you know, where people didn't look like me, I would kind of shy away from conversation because I didn't want to talk about venture because I didn't know much about venture. But what it came down to is that I had been building a platform. I essentially built out our platform at Slauson Co, and we were all kind of building as we went. And have you guys ever seen those memes where it's like somebody's copying someone else, and then they're copying someone else, and like you're all trying to look a certain way, and then you realize that they're all copying you. That's kind of what we've seen at Slauson Co. is like, we're creating a standard of excellence. And it's not concessionary to invest in Black and brown or untapped founders. We're actually just investing in like the wider group of people with more diverse thought. And I feel like at this point in my career, like we're actually who people are looking to understand, like, how do you guys do Slauson summer camp? Like our swag is amazing. So people are always asking for our swag. And I guess it just really leads to the fact that like, if you're gonna do something, do it the best, because now I feel like we are creating a standard within the industry.
And I know, like, we're probably trying to wrap up. I'm gonna like just say one more thing. One more thing. So I want to brag on Slauson for a little bit because like they have some of the coolest founders in the world as a part of their portfolio company. They're just down the street, but I'm gonna give you some examples of a few. So one guy named Omar Bailey used to be the former head of Yeezy's innovation lab. So like the Yeezy foam runner, he has now built a company that 3D prints shoes, and it's the fastest production you've ever seen because it's not going through the full production process and shipping from overseas and everything else. He's a part of the portfolio. There's another company called Engine Ears that was founded by Kendrick Lamar's producer named Derek Ali. And he has a great founding team around him, but they're revolutionizing the music industry and how you train to become an audio engineer and then how you can connect with the artists. So you can get more business and you can find studios and everything else. And I can go down the list because every single founder has like the super just like coolest story about who they are and their lived experience. Like if you talk to Derek, like Derek is this big dude, tatted all up, like his hair could be in a fro and it's flying everywhere. If you saw him on the street, you might not know, like you wouldn't know. Yeah, he's been up with a lot of stuff. But like dad, there's no difference between like us and you. You know, the only thing that's different is like, you know, having the courage to step out and like share your story and be vulnerable with yourself and say like, what about my life or my family or my community's experience can I change? And then sometimes you're not the person that's like me, that's like delusional, but you might be like one of these guys that is like the first follower that needs to join the delusional person to help make sure their story actually comes true. But it's just like, remember what I said, like, cause it's easy for me to look at Omar and Derek, and like, I have a lot of other friends, like, with super cool stories. And I think they're the coolest people in the world. They're honestly like, just like you and just like us. And so really lean into like your lived experience, as Slauson says, that is your competitive advantage. Okay?
Gosh, that was so perfect. And we want to just welcome everyone. We have a reception outside. So please stay. You'll have an opportunity to say hello, chat informally, have something to eat. And thank you all again for, thank you all for being here. So.